In this lesson for our Task 1C house project, we're going to just go back a little bit. We're going to take a little bit of time just to find out or reevaluate how our mix is going and start shaping it a little bit. And you're going to find this as you go through, you will have to kind of think, okay, I've gone as far as I can, now I need to go back and just kind of reevaluate some of my earlier decisions. And it's worthwhile just doing this process just to make sure everything is kind of as it should be. Now, I've deliberately done it at this point because I wanted to get my rhythm in, as I said previously. I wanted to get my bass line in, I wanted to get some of my chords put in, and I wanted that main vocal in. And now I've kind of got my minimum amount of tracks, my 6 tracks. I've probably got a few more. I can now start thinking, okay, I need to make this sound more like house, or I need to start making this sound more like the Stimulus. And that's where the reevaluation comes in, and it's good just to take stock. And I've been a bit quiet on this project for the last couple of weeks because this is what I've really been doing. It really has taken me quite a long time just to go back and start looking at some of my initial ideas, because all I've done to this point is just lay down some really basic ideas. So now is the point where you have to start developing them and making them sound less mechanical, so you're going to eke out all of those marks. Now, the first thing I've had to do is I've had to come into the mixer and start pulling my channels down. Excuse me. The reason for this is when we last met, my channels were right up here, and it didn't matter so much when I was just showing you individual channels. But now we're going to be starting showing you the whole thing. I had sort of like +5 gain on the output, so obviously it's not ideal. So I've had to start trying to bring them down to this kind of 0 dB level. And as said in previous courses, it's always better to bring your levels down and sculpt it that way rather than trying to push for more, because once you hit the thresholds of these and you get it as high as you can, there's nowhere else for it to go. So if you think actually in terms of a sonic quality, bringing things down will just give you so much more flexibility to add extra parts and to kind of develop these further. So at this point, that's what I've done. I brought it all down, and I'll just play you this development part just so you can see that it's kind of in a good shape. So we're looking here. Okay, so you can see that we're in a pretty decent shape. We're not, we are still, no we're not, we're -1, so we've got a little bit of headroom there now, which is fantastic. Now, after re-sculpting my mixing desk and making sure everything's in the right place, I then started to kind of think, okay, let's go back a little bit. So let's go and look, reevaluate the drums. And I've just written my notes down here. So the first thing I did with my main drum pattern was think, okay, how can I make this sound more housey? How can I make it sound more lively and give it that kind of authentic old school kind of feel? And a few of my research development kind of things that I was looking at was saying, actually, why don't you down tune, or I've put detune there, but down tune the drums so they're all on the same key. So that's the first thing that I've done. So if I come over here and I click on my drums and then I go into Ultra Beat, what you're going to notice is that if you come down to this kick, so there's my kick, and if I select it, I've come over to here and it says pitch A2. Now you can pitch this up or pitch it down as much as you want. Okay, and let's go all the way down. So if you want some kind of, that's quite nice, but not what we wanted. So the way I've tuned my particular kit is I've gone to A2. Let me get it back to A2. And I've tuned everything around this kind of keynote to make sure that we get these really thumpy sounds. This kind of 909 kind of drum kit sound, okay? So that's the first thing. I've gone through all of these and just down tuned them, just to make sure we have got everything at a really good level. Okay, I think one of these I put at A3 because it was the way I like to hear it, is A3. So this second hat on A3. So that's the first thing. The next thing, looking through some of my kind of research, it was suggesting that everything should be a bit more punchy. So the drum should be a bit more punchy. So I've also come through and I've reduced the attack. So I've got 1 millisecond of attack here. So I've just pulled this dial in to give me less attack, so it kind of comes in more punchy. And I've also reduced the release and decay rates as well, just to make it that much more punchy. And I've gone through and I've literally done this with all the tracks, and I've found the optimal position. Sometimes if you bring them in too close, they don't sound as good as you want them to. So I've selected my envelope and I've just reduced the attack, reduced the release until I'm really happy with it. And I get these really punchy sounds by doing that. Now this part of it you can write up in your question 8 part of your logbook, how you've developed the timbre sound. So you can put this in, that we've changed the tune and we've changed the envelopes of these sounds. Okay, so that's the first thing, make the sounds more punchy and bring them down to give them more thud. Okay, so over here, what else have I done? I've reinforced this offbeat pattern with the hi-hats. How I've done this in my actual pattern, if I come to this one here, you'll see, and I'll just zoom in ever so slightly. Now where is it? Here it is. Now actually, it's not a very good example. Let's just find a good example. Here we go. So here's my hi-hat pattern. The first thing I've done is I've brought the volume up of the hi-hat. So there's the hi-hat. So straight away you can see, because it's red, it's really loud. Now I learned a really good technique for this. If you press the key and then go to your velocity tool and you slide it up or down, it will actually bring everything on that track all the way across all of these instruments. It will bring them up or down. So that was a really good technique to doing everything really quickly. Okay, now how I've reinforced that is by adding this second hi-hat. You hear that? So it's a bit more clicky. Oops. So we've got that one and it's been reinforced by that one. So now we have this very dominant kind of offbeat hi-hat pattern, which is really common in house music. Okay, so that was one of my house features that I've made it kind of go dum ch dum ch dum ch, so you get that kind of offbeat accent. Another thing that I've done to make it sound less mechanical is I've added slightly more swing. And I have changed my patterns ever so slightly, and it's up to you how you change your pattern. The most important thing about the house drum kit is this 4 to the floor and this offbeat kind of pattern. So how you arrange that is really up to you and the kind of patterns that you want to develop. But one way of making it less mechanical is having these patterns slightly off the beat. So if we zoom in, you'll see that not only have I shortened my notes now, okay, to make them more punchy, even more punchy, but I've also taken them off. So you get this kind of doubling effect, which adds that much more emphasis. And I've got it down here as well. You can see this on the bass drums down here. So you can hear that the deeper thud is slightly after. So you get this kind of that kind of sound, which is, it's a really nice sound, and it will add a lot more emphasis to those tracks. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much all I've done to the drums. And like I said, I have actually shaped my drum kits a lot more, so I've made them different. So from the last video, my drum sets have changed. I'm not going to give you too much information about how they've changed, just purely because it's really your call now to put in your patterns and kind of develop them in your own way. But those are certain techniques that I wanted to share with you, just so you know actually this is what you should be doing to make them less mechanical, to make them more housey. You should be looking at these elements. Let me just mute my electric piano and let me just show you how this is developing. So we'll just play it from this development 3 and I'll show you how this is sounding now. So you can hear that is sounding just brilliant, and I'm really happy with that. And I will continue to mix these. One of the other things that I'm going to do is separate these drums out. Now using Ultrabeat, they make this really easy because it's a multi-timbral instrument. You can actually set up a bus for each one of these sounds, so you can separate it that way. So that's something that I'll discuss during the mixing stages of how I've separated all these out. But that's the next kind of development, because I want to put a bit of New York compression on it and make them a lot more punchy. But we're in a good place with the drums. So that's one of the developments I've done. Changed a few of my patterns, made it less mechanical, made it less repetitive as well. So each time I come through here, the drum patterns are changing and they're starting to sound really good. Now, last part for this particular lesson is I've also started developing my piano sound. That's why I muted it, just because I didn't want to give anything away too soon. Now, I've developed this based on Duke Dumont's I Got You. Now, in this particular track, if I let's come back to this part here. In the Duke Dumont track, he's got this piano pattern that plays on the 1 and then it plays on the 4, and it just gives it this jumpy pattern. I didn't want that all the way through, but I certainly thought that would be better than what I currently had, where it was just playing on the 1. So it'd give me that kind of feel where it's kind of bouncing a little bit more. And once again I've developed that. So that's the initial idea, is where it's come from. Let me just play this track to you. I've got to open it up here in another screen. So see if you can hear the piano in this kind of 1-4 pattern. And did you hear the filter on that as well? At one point it was bright, and then they applied the filter to the piano so that it kind of dulled it down so the vocals come in over the top. Let me play it back here a little bit because it's slightly better. Here it comes. There it is. So hopefully you can hear that, just going down, 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 and that's really nice, and that's what I was going for there. However, I have developed that just to kind of make it less repetitive. So if you come through, you'll notice, just change that around, you'll notice that yes, I've got this, and I've gone back to that in this section here just to give it a bit more space because I want to add some more stuff into here. I've kept with this 1 beat. If we move on, you'll notice that I've developed it even further during this section. So rather than just going 1-4 now, I put these kind of off-beaty patterns in, and that's quite common in house to kind of double up these patterns. So that was quite nice. But I've gone even further up here, where I've kind of gone for this really nice pattern. Now, these aren't the actual chords I'm going to use. Once again, I'm going to develop the chords further, but I want to show you the pattern. So it's important to get the rhythm, and then you can play around with the chords. As I was saying up here, I've written in maybe my alternative chords, C, E minor, G. I'm going to play around with that. That didn't quite work. The E minor, G didn't quite work, and I was going to have that going over just 1 bar. So I still need to play around with that and just see how it goes. But this is the initial ideas that I've got, and this is how I'm breaking up my piano to make it sound more housey now. So when I'm writing in my logbook about the house elements I'm using, I can now refer to my Duke Dumont I've Got You for the piano and how I've developed that. That is pretty much all I have to say about this particular track for now. Hold on, no, sorry. One other thing that I did do is add this exciter, which gave it a bit more punch as well. This one here, so it's basically just a default sound, and I've just brought the frequency up to 31. It just added that, I don't know, just gave it a bit more push, I guess. Let me solo that track so you can hear it. Gave it a house feel. I've also added this really nice delay down here as well. It's a stereo delay. Once again, I'm just playing around with some of the settings, but it's giving it quite a nice kind of doubling it up even further. So let me play with it off. And on. So that's quite nice. So that's one of the other things that I've done. So I'm just going through at the moment and tweaking them. In the next lessons, I'm probably going to add a couple more parts. I'm still going to develop my vocals even further. But before I leave you guys, I'm just going to play my track through just so you can hear how it's developing, and then you can crack on with yours. Okay, so just got to finish off the end. So that's the development, that's where I'm currently at. We're going to push this forward, add some strings, add some other samples, improve the vocals, and we're getting to a really good point. So I'll see you in the next lesson.